Hello and welcome back to the next episode of Techs of the Roundtable, episode 5. Today I have some really special guests for the show. I have Chaunce Hazelton as well as Corey White. We are going to dive into some really cool stories and lessons here in just a little bit. But before I dive into that, I really want to give these gents an opportunity to share a little bit more about themselves, their experience, and their journey. Corey, why don't you go ahead and kick us off?
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be on. A little bit about me. I've been in cybersecurity for about 30 years now, cybersecurity veteran. Been around the block, run pen test teams, global incident response teams, remediation teams, and currently I'm founder of a company called Savitar. We secure mid-sized businesses all the way down to small businesses. And again, when you think about cybersecurity can be preventative. The mindset of detect and respond or doing one piece of cybersecurity and not doing all of cybersecurity is very bad because the hackers are going to exploit every single gap that you have. So you have to do comprehensive cybersecurity and build it in a preventative, continuous state. And that's what we do.
That's awesome. Keeping it proactive. I like it.
Yes.
All right, Chaunce, you're up.
Hey, thanks for having me on, Anthony. It's a pleasure to be with you guys in your company. So my name is Chaunce Hazelton, and I'm the founder and CEO of Analysis. So essentially, what we do is we try to find companies that don't really have knowledge of the field of cybersecurity. There's a lack of knowledge, and then there's a gap, where people think IT and cybersecurity are the same thing. So we're trying to, clear that up and make sure people are understanding because if you're not protected, like you're gonna get hacked, right? It's not a matter of if, it's when. Essentially, we try to provide the outcome of cybersecurity insurance. So in order to have that insurance in place, you need to have the protective and mitigated measures in place. So we provide that.
Nice. Yeah, being a consultant, I've helped many clients through their process of obtaining cyber insurance, and just having those foundational protections in place in order to get adequate coverage is so important. So, oh, that's awesome. Now, for the viewers, I am really excited about today's show because I have a group of really strong entrepreneurs on today, and that is what we are going to really be diving into. Now, Corey and Chaunce, both of you gentlemen have started your own businesses in the cybersecurity arena. And I wanted to dive into a little bit more of your journeys. What led you to the idea behind your business? And what was your journey like in developing out and building your business? Chaunce, you want to kick us off for this one?
Yeah, sure. I think my business is more human centric, right? So if I feel like the field of cybersecurity is very tool saturated, in the sense of like, okay, we can have all of the Nessuses and the Qualises of the world, but if your people aren't really educated, what is the sense of having a tool, right? Because at the end of the day, they're the ones who's going to click the link, right?
Mm-hmm.
So I think our company is much more education based as opposed to, okay, let's go get a whole bunch of tools, just install them, just to secure a network. So yeah, and education is very important.
Yeah, well, I mean, the humans are very commonly the weakest link in a security chain. You could have all of the security tool sets in the world, but it's not going to help if someone, a user, opens the door for a threat actor. And so,
Correct.
no, so that's really cool. So you take that education approach to security. What led you to like this idea to start Vulnalysis?
Well, like I said, I saw a gap in the industry where it was very tool based, where everybody
Mm-hmm.
would be at conferences talking about, hey, like we need to implement this, like XDR, MDR, like you'd hear all the buzzwords, right? But are we really approaching the real problem here? It's the human. Like at the end of the day, like cybersecurity, it sounds like a tech term, but it's more so to protect humans, right? It's to protect people's identities, right? So we really need to get down to the nitty gritty and speak on things like that and approach that.
Nice. Yeah. No, absolutely. Oh, that's awesome. That's awesome that you've kind of leaned into that gap that you've seen and are really pushing to make a difference there. Now, Corey, what about you? What was the impetus for starting Cyvatar?
I've always had an entrepreneurial mindset. And I've been blessed to work at companies where all the way back to, geez, probably the 90s, where I've run my own teams and P&Ls, and starting as an independent consultant. And then, being a consultant, you're on site and you're in charge of that particular customer. So I've always kind of had that mindset. So when I joined the team at Foundstone, became director of the West, I ran the West and the West for Foundstone, McAfee, and ultimately Intel Corporation. As it relates to services, had three different teams: incident response teams, pen test compliance teams, and then lastly these deployment teams. But I was still running that whole team, and my bosses at the time allowed me quite a bit of autonomy. And then being a founding executive at Silence in 2012, taking something from zero and growing it up to a unicorn and running a global services organization, that's intrapreneurial, right?
Mm-hmm.
Entrepreneur inside of a company. And so once my last company, Silence, got acquired, then being acquired by BlackBerry, and there are different management models, and let's just say they have a different management model that I'm used to, and so for me, it was painfully obvious that I'm just that type of person that likes to run his own show. But on top of that, when you go back to the tech and tag on to what Chaunce said, when I first started in cybersecurity, getting my CISSP in like 1999 and learning all these things, they teach you it's people, processes, and technology.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. But then when you get into the business world and even in the startup world, I think a lot of it's, and I think I know a lot of it's driven by VC funding and what gets you funded
Mm-hmm.
and what gives you a product multiple versus a services multiple. So to actually solve the problem of cybersecurity, you need people, processes, and technology all at the same time. You can't say that I have this amazing product, but I'm gonna give it to people. We were talking about Sentinel One and any next gen antivirus, but you can have the best endpoint protection solution in the world. But if it's not installed properly, if it's not configured properly, and it's not continually managed and monitored, you're going to get compromised. Like literally, I have customers that have come to us that have had Sentinel One or CrowdStrike or whatever, wasn't set up.
Mm-hmm.
It was an IT shop, and to Chaunce's point, IT versus cybersecurity is an IT shop that, hey, we installed antivirus. They didn't know how to configure it. And so these compromises happened, and then they ended up coming over to my company, Cybertar. So there's a lot of gaps that I just laid out. And so that was really the motivation for me starting this company.
I could not agree with you more. So I've been in consulting for the last 7 years. I also am a founder and CEO of a consulting firm myself. I don't broadcast it very very often. It's more of my side thing, but it really is also centered around that. Is you need the people that know how to actually perform and do the work. The I can't tell you the number of environments and the number of clients that I've walked into that they have exactly like you were saying, Corey. They have all the technology, and actually, Chaunce, they have the top of the line XDR. They have all of the different bells and whistles and all the different add-on features that you could think of. They have MDR, they have SOC, they have all of this, but they don't have the people with the know-how in the right seat to be configuring the tool sets to be really effective.
And so when we speak about people, right, there's that side of actually being able to have the talent and the knowledge and the competency to install these tools. But there's the other side of the buy-in, right? So the
Mm-hmm.
people that are in charge of the company, like the C-suite, do they believe in security, right? The top-down approach. If you don't get that support, well, how are we going to move forward? A lot of people think cybersecurity starts in the server room, right? But it's more so in the boardroom, I believe.
Mm-hmm. Oh no, absolutely. If executive sponsorship is incredibly important. I mean, if you don't have any funding, you don't have any people, you don't have any technology, and I'm guessing you don't have the time to build processes out either.
You don't have an information security program.
Exactly, exactly. And so, really dialing in on that, the people aspect, it's capturing buy-in, It is also having the right resourcing to manage the information security program, but then it's also on the education front as well and educating your users. So as we're kind of building this out, you can really see how cybersecurity really does become human centric. Like above and beyond all else, the human factor in cybersecurity, I would argue, is the most important factor. Um, with that, what are maybe some of the lessons that you guys have learned as you guys have gone through your cybersecurity journeys and that have led you to this more people centric or people focused positioning?
I would say for me, like I've always been more about people. Like, okay, I am in the field of tech, but outside of that, it's like, okay, you can do all these techy things, but are you cool enough to hang with, right? So if I have a team of engineers that I know there's one guy who's really good at Linux, and there's another guy who's good at like Windows, and there's a guy who doesn't really know much, but he's willing to learn, and he's just a super cool dude to hang out with. Who are you gonna, who do you think, Anthony? Who do you think you want to, be around in that work at all times,
The guy who's cool to hang out with.
right? Because he's also willing to learn.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess that people centric mindset comes from that, that build up for me in a sense. And I kind of apply that to everything that I do in life. Like if it wasn't for humans, none of this stuff, cybersecurity, business, none of that matters. So take care of your people, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And that piece you said also there is really important. Willingness to learn. Yeah. For one, and I think I said this on a prior pod as well, but really just to put it succinctly, don't be a dick. Like
Yeah.
that really helps quite a bit.
Let's break the
But
ice.
yeah, exactly. But to that same extent, it's also be ready to learn, be looking to learn, be a student of learning. And that I think is so important in this IT and cyber field because it's changing so rapidly and it is always evolving to a spot where what you knew last week is now outdated information. And you need to continue to research, continue to learn and upskill just to stay on top of things, not even to stay ahead.
And I would say even in that sense, what you mentioned, of like, people willing to learn. Like I feel like sometimes that's not something that's tangible on a resume if we want to go into that sector a little bit.
Mm-hmm.
So people can be overlooked, and I would say to all of the the employers out there, give people a shot.
Mm-hmm.
Give people a shot, and just give people a reason to working with you.
Yeah, having a good work environment that
Yeah.
actually pulls people in and retains
Right.
is super important, especially in cyber where it's really easy to get burnt out.
Yep.
Now, what about some lessons that you guys learned as you guys were building the business? What were maybe some nuggets of wisdom that you could share with the listeners here that helped you to build your business, to grind up and really develop something that you guys are now proud of?
Yeah, I mean, I'll jump in there. So I think it's like, one of the things that's missed when people think about technology and building a technology company or a cybersecurity company is what is your go-to-market? Okay. Because it really comes down to how will you make money and can you make money with this idea? I've seen a lot of brilliant ideas out there, but they don't make any money. It doesn't grow, it doesn't scale. And so you have to really look at, and I've done this analysis, and I'll break it down like this. It comes down to it's at least, and I think it's pretty much only four reasons why a company is going to spend money on cybersecurity. And there's no particular order here, but here are the four. Okay. Number one, compliance. And again, that's a business driver. So the executive or a sales team, somebody in the sales organization, is trying to get this new deal, and they're like, well, you can't work with this company unless you're SOC 2 compliant. Now, compliance does not necessarily equal security. It's a box checker, but it's a driver. Okay. Now, the second one, which is slightly related, is third-party risk management. So you want to get this big deal with this large global company, their third-party risk management team is going to send you a questionnaire that you have to complete. And if you don't meet all the requirements, you don't get that big deal with that big global organization. Okay. Then number three, those same companies may say, okay, you're compliant and you answered the third party risk questionnaire and you met those requirements. Now you need to add us to your cyber insurance policy. In case you have a breach, then we know we're covered too. Because you're a partner of ours and you have potential access to our customer data. So you need to have, cyber insurance. And number four, I wish I could say that companies would, spend money proactively on cybersecurity, but they
Boy.
don't. They don't. The only reason why they spend money on cybersecurity, the biggest driver to that is they got breached. They got breached. After the breach happens, and I've literally have done hundreds of breaches after over 24 years of running incident response teams, hundreds and probably even thousands at this point. The number one question we get from whether it be the board or the CEO or some executive, what do we have to do to make sure that this doesn't happen again? Okay. Because obviously what they were doing did not work. And so to tie in, so what is happening at just crazy scales right now, and this has really only changed in the last 5 years as it relates to breaches. 5 years ago, MSPs, for the most part, were IT companies.
Mm.
Today, your MSP is a security first company. Now, going off from what Chaunce said, now, does that mean that everybody is learning quickly and pivoting and getting that new skill set? If you've been an IT person for 10, 15 years and you're just not going to be able to catch up and be a cybersecurity person and be able to compare it to, like, I've been doing it for 30 years, pretty much all cybersecurity for 30 years. It's just a different level. I'm not saying you have to have 30 years experience, but it's just not the same. But my baseline was IT. Okay, so I got basic IT skills. I wouldn't say I'm an IT person anymore, but I know the basics of IT. I know TCP/IP, I know networking. I've done all those things. Then you put cybersecurity on top of that.
Mhm.
But if I say I must, start with cybersecurity, and I don't have the baseline in either one necessarily, it's challenging. So one of our technology partners that we work with, actually referral partners, they just one company alone, they do 1,200 incidents a year.
Wow.
The vast majority of those companies that had those incidents, they also had an MSP or some IT company. So what does that tell you? That many of them, or even an MSSP, let's not neglect them.
Mhm.
If you really look at it in MSSP, they say, we're not going to fix anything. We're just going to monitor. We'll see an alert when something bad happens. Now, I'm an ex-pen tester. As an ex-pen tester, by the time you get that alert, and I ain't going to say I was a good pen tester, I was an okay pen tester. I've exploited a vulnerability, escalated privileges, and maybe exfiltrated data. And
Really?
yeah, it's just too late. So the whole concept of detect and respond and what MSSPs do is flawed. Then the whole concept of what an MSP saying, hey, we bolted on cybersecurity, but in many cases, those requirements come from those customers saying, hey, I need a pen test to check this box. Pen test doesn't stop a hack. Okay, I need endpoint protection to check a box. You can go get the cheapest endpoint protection out there you want and check the box. Does not mean you're secure. So those are the challenges that we are facing. So when you talk about go to market, which problem are you solving? Which one of the four problems are you solving? Are you solving all four? Are you solving one niche? So what does your product actually do? And so that's what you have to think about when you're building a cybersecurity company. How can I go to market? How can I solve the needs and educate the market out there? Because they don't know these things I just said. They just
Mhm.
think, hey, my IT company can do cybersecurity, box checked, I'm done.
And to tackle on what Corey said, pretty much like you have to know your audience when you're going to market, right? So each company is different. When you're speaking these jargons and these lingos about the technologies, you have to know exactly how to put it for that person so they can understand and be receptive of the language you're talking in cyber terms.
Absolutely. Like, so there was so much good goodness in what you just said, Corey and Chaunce. What you're adding on, we got to unpack this a little bit further. So, I think one, you just highlighted a fantastic gap that we have. So you were talking, we have MSPs here. They were always an IT company, and now, yeah, you're 100% right. They're all looking at security first because it's so important, and I mean, it doesn't matter what systems you have if you can't protect them. And so that those organizations are starting their pivot into security. Now it's a slow process, and a lot of them don't have the full build out of security know-how, knowledge, and expertise to really
Funny.
build it up.
It's funny you said that because it's like every vendor now is like, oh yeah, we utilize AI. It's kind of like just sticking a straw in a coconut and saying, hey, yeah, it's coconut water. Like,
Absolutely. Well, yeah, exactly. Well, and that's their replacement essentially is, oh well, we're building out this skill set. It's our AI bot, you know, and so that is definitely a gap there of just lacking security skill sets. And I'm not saying every MSP is like this, but like it's definitely a trend. And then on the flip side, MSSPs, and now Corey, you've run incident response teams. I've run incident response teams as well. I ran an MSSP a few years ago, and luckily I was in one where we did do a lot more consulting with the client. But I've definitely seen what you were talking about as well, where the MSSP is literally just monitoring. And so that can lead a company to have this false sense of security of like, we got an MSP that says that they're security focused. We got this MSSP that is monitoring, which is really that reactive stance. So the organizations that like upper leadership doesn't know a ton about IT or about cybersecurity, quite honestly, they shouldn't. That's not their role. But they are now in a position where they think they have the right experts in place, the right seats and butts and chairs to accomplish the work and do it right, and when really they don't. And so that's a serious gap where I think organizations like your guys, like Cyvatar and Vulnalysis, really come in and play fill that gap really well. Of we have the expertise, we're going to help you, we're going to help your and consult on your security to make your proactive protections better and build your security, your overall security protections up.
and I guess, on the approach to whoever you're talking to, sell your service, right? I feel like the best way to work backwards is from a cyber insurance aspect. Because, at the end of the day, like we know cyber insurance is just going to cover it, right? It's the blanket statement. It's kind of like you have a fence around your house and people can hop a fence, but if you got a shotgun in the crib, it's like, all right, I got protection, right? Which is the cyber insurance. So I like to explain it and walk it back. Okay, you need to get cyber insurance, but here's what you need to do in order to get that coverage, right?
Mm-hmm.
Like Corey always I always listen to when he speaks. He says you can't get insurance, like car insurance, without a seatbelt, right? You're not going to get car insurance coverage from without having brakes. Like, so it's a perfect example as to why you should kind of start from that end.
Man, that premium on
Uh-huh.
a car insurance without brakes. That. But no, so exactly, and I think how you guys are fitting in and filling that gap is really important, and converting it into a language that also the executives, the decision makers at an organization, when you're talking to them about your services, converting it into a language that they can understand. And in most scenarios, business leaders can, to a certain extent, understand insurance. I mean, like, you need to have this coverage so that if something happens, you're covered for it. But to do this, you need to do X, Y, and Z. And I
Right.
think that that's a great approach.
Yeah, I feel like they're more willing to toss some money towards insurance than cybersecurity. So you kind of got to tie it in, right?
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, and on that same point, they are shoveling money into insurance, which is much more of a reactive protection, which kind of loops into another piece, another thread that I wanted to pull off of what Corey had said here as well, where you had said the number 4 on your list was a company's experienced a breach.
Mhm.
Now, I have a question for you guys. I want to get both of your takes on. In my experience, and I've been consulting over the last 7 years, and I've kind of seen a transition over those 7 years. Um, when I first was really getting into it, if a company experienced a breach, you could almost count on almost immediate investment, no matter what happened or what the scenario was. If something happened, oh yeah, okay, let's make sure that this doesn't happen again. More recently, I've encountered more organizations that it really depends on the scale, on the size of the incident or the size of the breach. Did they lose $5,000? Okay, maybe that's not that big of a deal. Did they lose $1 million? Okay, well, now we need to do something. Have you guys seen something similar to that, or is that just within my client sphere that I've been seeing that?
No, that's absolutely it. It's interesting. We've had many philosophical conversations over the years. What is an incident? Is it incident that someone clicked on a link? Is it an incident that malware is on someone's computer? Is it an incident that data was stolen? Is it anyway, what is the actual incident? How you define that? Because, depending on what actually happened, that triggers a certain reaction. Because here's the deal. So a few things, just let's just say it is declared an incident. Well, okay, let's walk this back a bit. So wait a second. Well, okay, if it is an incident, do I call my insurance carrier? I'll call my insurance carrier, then I have a claim, then I'll probably get dropped after I have this claim. And I
Mm-hmm.
may or may not get paid for this claim that I have, because if I check the boxes and sells patching every single week and the incident came from an exploiting of a vulnerability that was not patched and the system didn't have MFA, and I also said I had MFA, then I call my insurance company, then I may not have insurance.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, so is that an incident? Okay, if I have, say, PHI information, healthcare information on my systems, and that may have been exposed, do I notify my customers that healthcare information may be exposed? I have a HIPAA violation at this point. Is that an incident? If I call the FBI, and this is just to be clear, I've done many, many, many cases where we brought in the FBI, but that's the customer's decision. We've made the recommendation. The FBI doesn't immediately make it public. They don't make it. They literally. I mean, I really hadn't seen it made public until it's not driven by the FBI. So the FBI is not going to call the news media or something like that. They, in many cases, they're like, we're monitoring this situation, we're investigating, and it's quiet. Like 99% of the time, it never gets out. Period. So it's a best practice. Call the FBI,
Mm-hmm.
especially in law enforcement, if you think you have a breach or some type of activity, because there's a very good chance that they know about it, or they're monitoring this threat actor group, or they may be able to stop someone else from getting compromised. But again, defining that incident, because once you define that it is an incident, then you all have all these subsequent activities that happen to it. And I think one of the biggest fear over the years is if you declare you had an incident, now you got to notify your customers, then you lose customer confidence, and that could affect your business and your revenue. So these all become business decisions. What do you do? Now, yes, there are some legal and compliance requirements that you need to follow,
Mm-hmm.
but in some cases, the executives don't even know what those are. They're like, what are we supposed to do? And then you also need to bring in your law firm, attorney-client privilege. In many cases, your law firm, your breach coach will tell you what to do. So it's a lot of pieces to that puzzle around, do you notify, and what should you do, and what defines as an incident?
Yeah, so I think, and I'm going to give you my take on what's an incident and kind of how that lands, because this is a really, really interesting conversation. Um, my overall take on this is uh, everything essentially. You alerts roll up into an incident, and an incident is an attack story. Um, an incident is an incident until an attorney labels it a breach. And so, in my perspective, the IRP, the incident response plan for an organization, has varying levels. The business leader determines the severity based off of a matrix of different factors that aid the assignment of a severity. And then at a certain severity, you reach a point where legal is brought in. And at that point, so maybe you have Sev, 5, 4, and 3 are all incidents, but they don't include data loss. They don't include financial loss. It's maybe a BEC with an initial email access, but you're not seeing additional data exfil or anything like that. Maybe that's like a Sev 5 or a Sev 4. In those scenarios, it's still an incident, but it doesn't rise to the severity level where it would legal would need to be involved. It doesn't appear that data was exfiltrated, and it seems like it's a lower severity incident versus a ransomware incident, which may be a Sev 1 if half your systems are down and it's pretty clear that they exfiltrated your primary finance database. At that point, yeah, you're pulling in the lawyers, and they would be the ones to determine, yes, this is a breach, and the legal liabilities and obligations that come with that. What do you think on that?
Yeah, it's interesting. I like it. That is a sophisticated model, and most, just say a mid-market company may not have something to that level,
Fair,
right?
yeah.
But
Sure.
this is the nuance to that. So let's see, you mentioned BEC. And I'll do both examples, BEC and ransomware. So you get a business email compromise where you get, one of your customers says, "Hey, did you actually change banks that we should be paying you to? Because I got this notice from you." So if you really unpack that, in most cases, this isn't just there's at least two scenarios. One scenario is someone can just be spoofing a domain and sending emails trying to look like it came from that person. But in a lot of cases, that director of finance or accounts payable receivable person, they clicked on a link and got themselves compromised, meaning their user account is compromised. This is the cloud user email account that is compromised. Microsoft 365, Gmail, G Suite, whatever, right? So that is compromised. So now the hacker has access into this user account. They see all the transactions and communications that's going on, and they're able to forward emails to another account that they may have, and they can monitor every single communication over several months. They can inbound emails from that particular customers or specific customers. They can put into a hidden folder that you don't know is coming in, and then next thing you know, you transferred money to the wrong account, or one of your customers has sent money to the wrong account. Business email compromise. So you really can't say it's just a BEC when there's account compromise taken over. Now, let's use a similar scenario and talk about ransomware. So you have old school ransomware, was this 2025? Okay, so 10, 15 years ago, ransomware was just malware. Okay. Hey, I clicked something, got my system compromised at my doctor, dentist office. Their systems, encrypted, and that's it. So today, which has been for a very long time, ransomware is a hack. Okay. Now let's talk about what is normal now, which is double and triple extortion ransomware.
Right.
Okay. So ransomware, just in the simplest form, means that, hey, your systems are encrypted, one or many, in many cases, many. And let's talk about the hackers are in. So they're looking at what are the most important critical systems for your organization. Okay, let's encrypt those. Let's not encrypt, this is old school thinking, not encrypt your print server, right? Not that anybody has a print server anymore, but let's not encrypt something that is not critical. Let's encrypt your customer database, system, your real critical systems. So that's what ransomware is. But now you think about it, systems and companies have moved to the cloud. So all this data is no longer in a local internal network that you're encrypting. In some cases, there's still companies that have it, but a lot of it's in the cloud now. So you got to have, double extortion ransomware. So, all right, we've encrypted whatever critical systems we get access to, maybe your user systems, whatever. That's one. The second is we've stolen your customer data. And if you don't pay this ransom, we're going to start, we're going to post this publicly or send it to your customers and tell them that their data has been compromised. Okay. But maybe that's not enough for to make you pay the ransom. Okay. So, triple extortion ransomware could be, say, okay, we not only have your customer data, we have taken over all the admin accounts of your company. So we have locked you out of your company. You no longer you're no longer admin of your, Microsoft 365 again, or Google, account. We're admin there. Your databases, all your finances, everything is in the cloud. Well, we have admin into everything. You can't get into your company. So if
Mm-hmm.
you want your company back, pay the ransom. So that's what's commonplace, double and triple extortion ransomware, because of the cloud migrations, and ultimately they're doing whatever they can to get a company to pay. So going back to the question of what is an incident, when you say, "Oh, I found ransomware on a system," for me that makes me think it's not just ransomware.
Mm-hmm.
There's accounts being compromised, and that's what it goes back to. Like those, many of the MSPs out there that just haven't been doing this for a while, don't have an incident response mind. But if I see an account be compromised and a ransomware on one system, then I'm like, okay, the company is owned, the whole company. You can't just say, hey, we're gonna just put on some new antivirus or setting the one CrowdStrike, block all the malware, and then we're good to go. No, you gotta look a lot deeper.
Yep. Uh, absolutely. And Chaunce, I want to give you a chance to chime in here really quick, but I just to add in there, I think really where we're coming to is it really depends. It really depends on the criteria of each specific scenario, incident response scenario that you might be in. And also, this is my realization of I'm kind of also running off an assumption because that's where I've been working in the last few years. My clients, they had, MFA deployed. They had the detection rules in place, the mailbox forwarding detection rules, the conditional access policies, the unfamiliar sign-in properties, the impossible travel alerting. So they had all of that in there as well. And so when we would go into a BEC environment, a scenario where we're responding to it, it's okay. Well, we have these tool sets that have mitigated some of the potential damage, as well as alerted us in time of granted. There's definitely still damage that can be done from the time of alert to the time of response. But with the tool sets that we had implemented, we were lucky enough to say, oh, okay, this was an initial access, and this was, it doesn't appear that additional data was exfiltrated from the environment, yada, yada, yada. So that's really was the realization for me of like, oh yeah, it really depends, because depending on what prep work in cybersecurity you've done beforehand is going to dictate how resilient you are to incidents and breaches on the back half.
So I want to get even, I mean, I can only imagine anybody who's not a cyber guy listening to this, the scare, the fear that they just got in their brain. And I'm going to add another layer to it, because it goes further than that, because you have the insider threat, right? That factor of having to do internal audits to make sure, like, again, I'll go back to this, the people-centric mindset, that they're doing the right things, right? That you have the right employees, that people are who have the integrity and such to not sell your company out to get you compromised, right? So you have to do your internal audits and stuff like that, logs, what just having a baseline of normal activity so you can measure against that. So yeah, it's scary out there.
Well, yeah, and you bring up some really really good points there. The user baseline. That's a big thing that I've been working with my clients on. And you have different things like user entity behavior analytics and
Yep.
stuff like that, where it does exactly that. It creates that baseline of standard activity, and so that you can alert on non-standard or unfamiliar activity based on the identity itself. And I think that's really cool technology that is a very active implementation of artificial intelligence. And then also I wanted to say to that same point around like the FBI and around like looping them in. Corey, you had mentioned around like when you've looped in the FBI and needing to pull them in for those different incidents that you've been responding to. That is so underrated. I'm part of InfraGard, which is the a partnership between public and private sectors, so that they can share information, have a quick access to a tip line, be able to notify when a serious breach has happened, and that is often like I've made those recommendations, and just like you said, Corey, like it is a business decision. It's a business decision to pull in the FBI, to pull in outside counsel. And I've made that recommendation several times, and I've seen several companies not go that direction out of concern. And I think that that's another area where we could work on the education in the cybersecurity area to really loop in business leaders and these IT teams, IT leaders that no, calling in FBI is not a negative. Especially in certain scenarios, it is really critical if to get some of that additional support. I think the FBI baseline is about $1 million for anything that they would actually really dive into. If you're talking in that range or above that range of figures, you really should have the FBI involved.
Mhm. Yeah. And you should, like you said, you have to consider that because there's a trust factor, right? These people are trusting you with their data.
Mm-hmm.
So do what you need to. Like, I get it, your image might be on the line, but this is your company. Man up and call in who you need to get the support.
Exactly. And to your same point there, I was thinking the same thing around our listeners are going to have a fun time sleeping after listening to this episode. And people wonder why cybersecurity is a little bit of a stressful industry.
Yeah.
Yeah, and I think it's important though. I know that it could be scary, but we have to understand the world that we live in today and live in it. And the examples I'll give is, I mean, hopefully everybody out there, if you haven't done this, freeze your credit.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Because yeah, if you haven't looked at the dark web and then just, I mean, you can use these credit agencies and whatever they'll say, it'll show you your information is already there. And it's not like you did anything wrong to get it there, because my information's there.
Mm-hmm.
So when I see, social security number, date of birth, and previous addresses, all that information's there. And I've had, random people, open, I think it was like a PayPal credit card account or something and charge up some stuff. And and I was like, how do they have all this information? I'm like, well, of course, it's on the dark web. They can go and be me or anyone else listening. They can be you instantly. So your data is already exposed. Okay. And when you think about it from that perspective, you have to be educated to protect yourself. So, freeze your credit. And I say this on pretty much all my public speaking events is multi-factor. You wouldn't believe how many people don't use multi-factor. But the point of it is that your password is already exposed. Okay. And I go back, and again, this is just my perspective that most people wouldn't have. But say, 20 years ago, we had all these password cracking servers. So we were hacking in, we would get the hashes, we had password cracking servers. And sometimes you get a really complicated password, and we're like, oh God, it'll take, 3 years or something to crack this. What happened to computing power in the last 20 years?
Got crazy.
So the fact that, we couldn't crack it with computing power back in 2005, just take a long time because it was a long, complex password. Well, those can be cracked really quickly. And then you couple that with many of us, we're humans, we have passwords for everything. Password reuse is just a thing.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. And it's a human thing. We cannot remember individual passwords for every single thing. So using password managers, yeah, and there's a lot of good ones out there. But on top of that, making sure multi-factor, even if it's unfortunately just the SMS texting, which can be, spoofed, but sometimes that's the only option you have. But that's better than just username and password. But ideally using like an authenticator app. But those are things that people need to be aware of. And that's what needs to be common knowledge, as opposed to, us assuming that we don't want to scare people, or this is too much, fear, uncertainty, and doubt. This is the world we're living in. And I have one more real quick example I'll give, which is, rather pertinent right now. I have a Coinbase account, and when I opened it about 5 months ago, I immediately started getting I wasn't even spam. It was all these emails, phishing emails saying, "Hey, Corey, your Coinbase account, has been updated. Click here." It was all fake. I knew it was, but why the day after I opened a Coinbase account, I got them. I never got any phishing from Coinbase, and I just started looking at them and started seeing them coming in just literally, every single day. And I said to myself, God, they're compromised.
Mhm.
And since the inside person feeding, and I'm thinking to myself, hopefully it's just email accounts or something, they're the Coinbase account, but they're compromised. And I even went through the exercise of looking up who, at the security team at Coinbase, if I knew anybody. I didn't know anyone. And unfortunately, ambulance chasing is a lot of folks out there. I think we've all seen it. If you're a founder of a company, you'll see. I mean, I think I got one this week. There's a, hey, we found a vulnerability in your website. You'll be compromised. Pay us this amount. Like, I don't want to get paid. I just want to say, hey, you guys probably have some kind of a leak internally.
Right.
But it's just, that's not even accepted. I mean, notifications is usually just not accepted by the companies, because of all of the fake notifications and that are out there. So I feel a little bit bad. I did not reach out to the people, at Coinbase, but also after a couple weeks, it kind of stopped, and I was thinking someone would have had to call this in. Like someone had to call and help desk. Hey, I'm getting phishing emails after I created my account. Someone would have had to say something. And so it stopped. I didn't see it after a few weeks. But again, insider threat is a thing, and sophisticated threat actors are coming at you at that level. Now small and medium-sized businesses, they aren't getting that, but companies like a Coinbase will absolutely get specific targeted insider threats that are being targeted.
Yeah, and I'm actually really glad that you brought insider threat back up, because that was actually another thing that I wanted to tie into what I was saying about InfraGard as well. Was the last meeting that we had was all about insider threat, and that is a very big concern in the current threat landscape and in future threat landscapes, because we've seen things like uh, threat actors on the dark web. They are posting and looking for uh, employees of ISPs, of Verizon, AT&T.
Uh-huh.
Hey, we'll pay you $10,000 to SIM swap for us, or we'll pay you, $20,000 to get us access to these accounts, or get us, duplicated SIM cards for these identities with that you have. And that is becoming a bigger and bigger concern, because that is a way where, as all of the security protections, all of the security technology, the thought processes, and the approach to securing your systems, all of that has really evolved over the last decade or so. But if you have someone on the inside, you circumvent a whole lot of those protections and technologies.
It's
Well,
tough.
yeah. I mean, it's a few pieces to that. Which again, we got to look at this as 2025, and also what is it in the future. So there's a few things that are happening along those same lines. Number one, AI based interviews. So there's, yeah, you probably heard about this. Yeah. So if someone can take this recording or whatever and create a digital copy of any one of us, and and go and do an interview and probably get a job, then they're inside.
Right.
Okay. And so we have to think about, how do we circumvent those types of attacks? And then when you think about these SIM swapping type of attacks, that's been going on for years, but here's a nuance to it. We're starting to get into a challenging economy for a few reasons, and let's just pick on just the AI side of it. There are a lot of layoffs just happening just in the last month or so, because larger companies can be more efficient with AI and don't need as many people. So if job security is a concern, you like, I may not have a job tomorrow, and you have a family, kids that you need to feed, or college education you need to pay for, whatever, and someone offers you $10,000 and you're in a challenging spot, maybe just got laid off or think you may be about to be laid off, you're gonna take that money. I hate to say it, not saying everybody's horrible people, but it's just, it's a different landscape. But if you had
Mm-hmm.
job security, you know that your company has your back. And I hate to say this, being a founder, it's the whole concept of your company having your back is challenged, because you want to have your employees back, but you also got to stay in business.
Mhm.
Okay. And so you got to stay competitive. And so, those are all things weighing, and the hackers, these malicious threat actors, they're taking advantage of all of these factors right now.
It's easy to get cracked down. Like you have all this pressure on you, like you can't pay your bills, like you're willing to do anything. Like I come from a government background, so we do like you have a clearance, you
Mhm.
have all these insider threat trainings and modules you have to go through in order to be aware of this stuff. And the stuff they talk on these trainings, I'm like, you would have never thought that these tactics existed. Like it's insanity. And like, again with Corey, like the AI layer is nuts. It's how do you stop it?
Well, with the AI layer too, and this is something I've actually talked about previously, is the it is both lowering the barrier to entry and raising the skills ceiling of
Yes.
hacking, because now you don't need to speak English to have a perfectly worded and grammar perfect phishing email. You don't. And then on the flip side of that, if you're a really advanced threat actor, you can then utilize AI for data crunching, for reviewing and indexing data sets that you've already exfiltrated, expediting your overall process to return to extortion.
Yeah, the last keynote me and Corey spoke on together, we spoke about fraud GPT. So that's I'm pretty sure you guys know about it. It's pretty much like the opposite of Chat GPT, where it takes the guardrails off and allows you to ask to pretty much create an entire campaign. Say if you wanted to go hack Bank of America, and it just does everything for you. Like you no longer have to be that technical to be a hacker.
Exactly. It is going to expand the pool of threat actors, and it is making that proactive approach to security for businesses all the more important, even more important, which is crazy to think that it could be even getting more important than it already has been. But ChatGPT, or just AI in general, generative AI, has really leveled that up to just the overall importance. And I am concerned as we get deeper and deeper into agentic AI, and when you have AI bots,
Yeah.
talk about a botnet. Now you have AI bots that are managing it, and it's autonomous. It's
And
going to be a very interesting few years.
I think the solution it come again. I'm always gonna come back to the human factor. It becomes the trainability and the receptiveness of the training. Like that has to be the number one thing you implement, because like if these people are, I love the zero trust architecture. Trust is not a form of verification at all steps, whether it be your applications, your software, your OS. Every step needs to have that zero trust principle implemented into it.
Yep, exactly. No, everything needs to be locked down at this point. Every step.
Absolutely. And just real quick, just to, I want to dumb it down because I do this for all my talks, just dumb it down for the audience. And super simple. And this is back to education charts. But when you go, I don't know, say you go into a football game, baseball game, whatever, you park your car. Okay. You close your door and you lock it and you let the windows up. Okay. And then you turn your alarm on and you walk away. All right. Those are basics and everybody does it. Now let's just play another scenario. Let's just say you close your door, but your window's still down. You lock it, you still can turn your alarm on probably, but your window's still down. And maybe, you left your laptop or your wallet on your front seat. And when you come back to your car, now, number one, if your car is even still there, then you're happy. But if your wallet or laptop is gone, and you go and tell people I left my window down, and your wallet got stolen or whatever got in your car, they'd be like, "Well, of course." So let's relate this to cybersecurity. So, say you have a company and you have endpoint protection, and maybe it's done properly. You got endpoint protection and it's locked down 24 by 7 SOC monitoring your endpoints, but you don't use multi-factor at all. And you don't do any patching at all. I see this on a very, very common basis. Most companies, they're not doing this, even the basics. And so when they get compromised and hit with a ransomware attack, and they're like, wow, why did this happen to me? Why are these horrible people happening? Why are they doing these to me? Well, it's because That's just the normal state. If you would expect your car to be broken into or even stolen if you leave your windows down, then you got to expect the World Wide Web, while that is not secure by default at all, and you're trying someone scanning you every single second, you will be compromised.
Mm-hmm.
So the foundation and elevation education of everybody needs to be elevated to a higher level. And we aren't even talking about AI or quantum or agentic. This is before all that. So that's why it's important for this baseline to get higher.
Yeah, you're completely right. And it's very reminiscent of something actually that a mentor have said to me, which is in the very same vein. If you have a house, you can have locks on your doors, you can have ADT out front monitoring, you can have all sorts of things. Doesn't matter if you leave the side window open. Just really doesn't matter. And it's the same thing. It's the same approach to cybersecurity. And also on that point, have you guys ever walked into a client site, like a client environment, that actually did a really good job of vulnerability and patch management? I feel like that's always one of the first things that I'm having to fix.
Because it's not easy, Anthony. That's why. And it's for us, we do that for our customers, but we had to find the right tools, we had to build the right processes, and after you do something over 100 times for over 100 different customers and thousands of endpoints, you get good at it. But if you're one, company and you've only done it this one time and you're trying to figure out the right tool, if you buy the wrong product, you're screwed for the next, couple of years. You got to have the right product, and it goes back to people, process, and technology. It's a hard thing to do, and so we perfected it. And I was at RSA. I had a long-term incident response friend of mine and a customer of mine, and we were just having happy hour, having drinks, and so the incident response guy was like, God, I just got another incident. I got to step away for a second. He goes off and does a call. Then my customer, it's like, what was that? That was someone got hacked, and he and he was like, yeah, another ransomware. I mean, there's been three, just over the weekend. And my customer's like, that still happens. And I'm like, and then I'll just say name. His name was just say Mike. Come on, Mike. You've been a Cybertar customer over your last two companies, And so he was a customer while I was at Silence, and a customer, here at Cybertar. And his endpoints have always been locked down, and and now he has our vulnerability management program, and he just had it all dialed in, and so it's foreign to him, but it's every day to everyone else.
Yep. No, that's a great point. That's a great point, especially from our vantage point as well. When we come in, this is what we do. This is our bread and butter. And so when we walk in, we're like, oh yeah, you got to have this, you got to have that. Like, it's obvious to us. And then we also know the steps to implement. But for a lot of organizations that don't have the right people, don't have the right processes, they may not even have the right technologies, then that's really where they need to call in consultants and people like us that are going to be able to help them just make sense of it, because it is advanced. Exactly.
Ask for the help.
Well, that I think is a perfect segue to lead into just an opportunity for you guys to shout out any projects or any big initiatives or anything that you guys want to shout out, your businesses for that matter, before we wrap up today. Chaunce, you want to get us going on that?
Well, so it's kind of like aside from my business, but I'm kind of tying it in. Corey knows this too. I'm in the film industry, so I'm actually working on a film that ties cybersecurity in to kind of show, what happens to the mass when it's not implemented.
Mm-hmm.
So it's going to be. I'm sure you guys have seen like Black Mirror.
Mm-hmm.
So I'm kind of going off of that segment base, like of the different independent episodes that show the different type of cyber hacks. One of the episodes, I'm gonna give you guys a throw in. One of the episodes I wanted to create where the president got a deep fake to where it declared war against a neighboring nation. So that's going to be very, very interesting.
Oh, that sounds really good. Okay, so I'm really looking forward to that show, but you got to know, I know Corey and I, we're going to watch it. We're going to be like, this cybersecurity better be on point. None of this CSI cyber stuff.
Oh no, it's gonna get granular for sure.
Good.
It's gonna be
awesome,
an ode to the cyber partners.
That's awesome. All right, well, thanks, Chaunce. Corey.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know if I could top that. That's super cool. But what I will say is this: what we built in our Savitar platform is, I find it ridiculous that many of these, mid-size and even some of the smaller ones, they're spending money on these assessments and gap analysis and trying to figure out what's wrong. And I use, you probably heard a few car analogies from me, but I think most people can relate to them. Just like taking your car to the dealership and saying, "Hey, I know I need a brake job and tune up," and then they're like, "All right, cool." They charge you $5,000-$10,000, and then you get a detailed description of what is wrong with your car and how you can fix it yourself. Just a security assessment, okay? And so you're like, no, I need you to actually fix it, okay? All right. And so I think we're the only industry that I can think of where you spend a lot of money for someone to tell you what's wrong. And it's very hard to find someone that is qualified to actually fix it and maintain it on a continuous basis. So at Savitar, you go to our website and click, sign up for free, our freemium. We're going to go give you free MasterCard risk recon scans. You'll be able to see what your external risk exposure looks like, no cost. You'll be able to get free external scans. You'll get a scan every month, so you'll see what your external vulnerabilities look like. You'll get free cybersecurity policies, and you'll get a free CIS gap analysis. So once you do all that and you see, hey, we've got some gaps or some vulnerabilities, and you actually you're ready to fix it, then you can click buy now, or you can contact us and we'll do a consultation and say, yes, I see you don't have any vulnerability management, don't have proper endpoint protection, security awareness training, et cetera, et cetera. We have solutions that are affordable, simple for all of that. So that's the give and the ask. Go evaluate your company's security for free, and if you're ready to secure yourself, then we're happy to help.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah, it's not cybersecurity isn't a cost; it's an investment. It really is.
Yeah, it was. I saw this quote yesterday. It was, if you are concerned about the cost of, it was like preparation. If you're concerned about the cost of preparation or protection, consider the cost of an incident.
Yeah, there's a quote from a guy I saw on, I forgot his name, but it was like, if you think compliance is expensive, try non-compliance.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Exactly. Well, no, thank you guys so much for coming on the show today. Now, I initially was thinking we were going to spend a lot of time today talking about like leadership and starting businesses and stuff, but this is just another testament that you put 3 cybersecurity nerds on a call together and you're just going to start talking cybersecurity. But this has got to be, one of the best pods that I've had so far. I really enjoyed having you guys on, and I hope to bring you back, down the line, check in with you guys and see how everything's going. But, for today and for our listeners, thank you for tuning in and listening. Chaunce, Corey, thank you guys for coming. And, I'm looking forward to seeing your guys' businesses continue to grow.
Thanks, Anthony.
Thank you.